The elegance of stone may be easier and more affordable than you think. You're about to view a training video introducing the application of Trilight stone for interior or exterior wall surfaces. You will need to measure your time versus the cost efficiency of an experienced mason. But the opportunity to enhance any wall surface in your home is at your fingertips. Start by rolling out grade double D tar paper and cutting off the folds. Always roll out a little more than you think you need to cover the length of the wall, and then cut the paper off the remaining roll. Roll the paper first along the bottom, keeping the edge flush and straight with the wall. Using the staple hammer tacker, fasten the tar paper to the wall at the studs. After the paper is secure, trim the excess off at the extrusions. Keep the knife tight against the edge so the paper is flush on both ends. For ensuing layers, the tar paper should overlap in a shingle fashion at least 4 inches over the sheet beneath. It's important to use a minimum amount of staples in order to reduce the number of holes in the tar paper. To apply the lath, you must first identify the side with protruding dimples, as these will be placed inward toward the wall. The lath is in a proper upright position when you feel a coarseness running your hand upward along the surface compared to the downward motion, which feels smooth. When fastening the lath to the wall, staple mostly on the wall studs. These are identified by the staples placed for the tar paper or by the lines you have drawn. After initially fastening the lath, check the entire area for bubbles and eliminate any gaps with additional stapling. The entire surface of the lath should be smooth up against the wall. It's important to use a staple at least 1.5 inches deep, or deep enough to penetrate into the stud. While staples with a 1-inch crown work best, here we are using a 3/8 inch crown. The top edge of the lower layers can be left loose. The stapling of the ensuing layers will fasten down this portion of the lower lath. Thus, the ensuing layer of lath should be overlapped at least 3 inches, also in a shingle fashion. It's important to staple down the seams of the lath to eliminate bubbles. When applying tar paper around the window, it's okay to trim it back from the window extrusion half or even a full inch. To seal the window to the tar paper, use ice and water tape. Starting at the bottom, simply apply the tape from the edge of the window extrusion onto the tar paper. Extend the end of the tape 4 inches beyond the end of the window frame to allow the intersecting strips of tape to overlap. Remember to apply the tape snug to the window extrusion and to keep the tape smooth. Again, the tape should extend an extra 4 inches from the end of the window frame for overlap. If there is room, place another strip of tape on the top after applying the tape to the sides. Use this method to waterproof any extrusion from the wall. After all tar paper, lathing, and water sealing is complete, you can apply the type and mortar to the wall surface. At first, apply the mud on extra thick with a trowel, and when enough is on the surface, skim it down and smooth it over. If working inside a house or along a window, you'll probably want to apply masking tape along the edges to avoid staining them with mud. As you smooth out the wall, remember that it's not necessary for the mud to be thick. Rather, the smoothness of the surface is the most important aspect, so be sure to scrape off the excess mud. After smoothing the surface with a trowel, take a horsehair brush and with horizontal strokes, try to sweep as level as possible, creating horizontal lines. Basically, this creates a texture for applying the stone to the dry scratch coat. After you've finished preparing the mud, clean the hock and prepare the stone for installation. When applying the mud onto the back of the stone, keep the edges clean and apply the mud heavier in the center of the stone. This will form a cone shape. This causes the mud to spread outward from the center so that less excess gets on the side of the stone. Excess will actually fall out, which is what you want to happen. When applying larger stones, you can make a groove in the mud to aid in the suction. In almost all cases, you should apply the stone from the top to the bottom. Press the stone onto the wall and shake it slightly. You can tell the stone has bonded to the wall when it no longer moves. You should scrape off the excess mud so that it doesn't bulge over the face of the stone. By starting at the top and working down, you can ensure the falling mud won't dirty the lower stones. It's important that you are conscious of stone size and color. You'll want to vary the size and color of the stones as they are placed next to each other. When the scratch coat is wet, you can still move some of the stones around, but with a dry scratch coat, this typically won't work as well. Once the wall has been filled with all the random stone you can use, start plugging the gaps. Find the smaller, longer, skinnier pieces to fill in the gaps and holes. You will need to break some stones with a rock hammer to fit them into the smaller gaps. Try to hide the broken side. You can also sand out the broken edge with the bottom of another stone so that the stone doesn't have a fractured look to it. When the wall has been completely plugged, it's necessary to take the tuck point trowel and knock out all the excess mud. This will enhance the grouting process, especially if you're not going to grout until the next day. To keep a consistent color, we use the same mud for the grout. Fill the grout bag up less than halfway with the type N mortar. Apply the grout into the joints, making sure it contacts the back wall and both stones or the edge that the stone is up against. The grout should flow out easily, but it should not pour. It should be thick enough so that it doesn't drip down. Once the grout has been applied, drying time varies depending upon humidity and temperature. Once the grout sets up enough, you can knock it down with a broken lath stick or even a paint mixing stick. It should crumble away from the wall, but be loose enough so it's still pliable. Be careful not to stain the face of the stone with any moisture smears. Knock down the grout so that the level is uniform over the entire wall. The stone should vary in depth, not the grout. It's very important to press the grout down against the stone, the wall, and against the adjacent stone so there is no gap between the stones. Once the knockdown grout has dried to the point of crumbling when disturbed, take a light wire brush and go over the grout and edges of the stone to clean away any excess. The goal is to make the grout even and smooth without lines. For this, it is important that the brush is not too coarse. A stainless steel or copper bristled brush works well. Finally, brush away any fine particles with a horsehair brush or a whisk broom. The grout should be dry enough at this point so that it does not smear. To install corners, use a bit more mud than you normally would. Apply by pushing the long side of the stone onto the surface and then sliding the corner in about 1/4 inch. This will help with the suction. Usually, when applying a square or rectangular stone, you'll want to use a torpedo level on the top of each stone to ensure that they're horizontal. When working with a stone that is not perfectly square, you can usually find a squared off point somewhere in the middle of the stone to affect the balance. Always make balance adjustments immediately while applying each stone before the drying mortar makes readjustment impossible. After balancing the cornerstones with a torpedo level, remember to remove excess mortar. The approach to weather ledge placement is to break up the vertical and horizontal grout lines as well as varying the color of the brick. Once getting a good variation, you can fill in the gaps by breaking stones with a rock hammer. Mark the spot on the stone and give it one jolt. After breaking, sand the edge down on another rock so it's not jagged and broken. Clean up the joints of the weather ledge with a trowel and grout the gaps in the same manner as other rock. Remember to completely fill in the gaps between each stone and between the stones and edges. Knock down, wire brush, and sweep the grout as with other rock. Once again, you should start at the top when applying ledge stone. The grout joints of ledge stone should also be offset by using different sized stones set next to each other. Each stone should be leveled perfectly. Using a rock hammer to create smaller pieces, you can fill in any gaps necessary to vary the grout joints. By varying the size of the stones placed next to each other, you can create a nice variation of the grout joints, both vertically and horizontally. Here we can see where 3 stones are placed next to 2 stones of larger sizes. This eliminates the look of one continuous grout joint running across the entire wall. Again, we prepare the wall for grouting by taking a tuck point trowel and cleaning up the grout joints. With stack stone application, there is no grout applied, so it is the only one where you'll start at the bottom and make your way to the top. A torpedo level should be used on every single stone to ensure a perfectly level row. This will aid in the application of the rest of the wall. By varying the stone sizes for each row, you can break up the vertical seams for a nice varied appearance. On the dry scratch coat, you can see where we've drawn level lines for brick application. Apply the mud to the brick and the brick to the wall in the same manner as the other stones, starting at the top, proceeding to the bottom. As you apply the brick, make sure that you've staggered the brick uniformly to make the vertical grout joints consistent on every other row. The lines grooved in the mud will aid in keeping the horizontal grout joints consistent. Typically, brick and stone on dry scratch coat is pliable as long as you still have the initial pressure on it. But once the pressure is taken off, you can't do much more with it. For creating the small pieces to plug the gaps in the brick, you should be able to cut the plugs in a uniform manner all at once with a diamond blade saw. Check to see if there is any slight variation with the vertical grout joints. Then fill in the gaps with the same manner as you applied the other stones. The grout is applied much the same way with brick as with other stone. With the thin brick, however, you'll want the mortar to spread a little out past the face of the brick. Try to avoid getting mortar on the face of the brick, but if you're not using colored mortar, you should be able to clear it off with a wire brush later on. When the grout is dry enough to crumble, take a common brick joiner and starting at the top, drag it along, pushing it up against the brick on both sides. Knock off the crumbling mortar, keeping the level equal. You should be able to finish by brushing all the brick off. Brush in both directions and down the joints on each side. Each installation project can have its own nuances, challenges, and questions. So please contact Trilight Stone via our toll-free number at 1-888-786-6626 or info@trilightstone.com, and we will do our best to walk you through your concerns and assist in the completion of your installation project.